Welcome back to the Within podcast. This is your host, Nikki Wallace, with Heidi Butoff and our special guest, Nola Cartmill today. Thanks for coming to the show, Nola. Oh my gosh. Happy Friday. So Nola is one of our friends. She's a lawyer here in Des Moines. She just went back into private practice. And so she can tell a little bit of her story, and then we have some fun HR, kind of HR topics we can talk about as well. But Nola, welcome to the show. Do you want to start by just introducing yourself and telling us a little bit about what you do?
Sure. So, as Nikki said, I'm Nola Cartmill. I grew up in Fort Madison, Iowa, which that is not the same as Fort Dodge. People all the time get them confused. But Fort Madison is in the southeast corner of Iowa. And I pretty early on knew that I was going to be a lawyer, partially because everyone told me that I should be a lawyer. And if anyone's ever had an argumentative kid, that's normally what we tell argumentative kids is like, hey, you should be a lawyer. I don't necessarily think that that advice is true, but for me, it actually worked out. So I went to the University of Iowa for undergrad. Go Hawks. Men are in the Elite Eight for March Madness. And then I was sort of thinking about law school and getting ready to go to law school, and I applied to a lot of different places, including Iowa, and I really thought that I was going to stay in Iowa, but then I decided to apply to a few other places because I got some free applications, and out of the blue, Harvard Law sent me this thing that was a child advocacy program, and I thought Ivy Leagues were stuck up and all of these things, and I got the little flyer, and I was like, maybe they are people too, because my dream was to be a family law lawyer, which, to be clear, in Iowa, that thing doesn't even exist. At least here in Polk County, they rotate, and so it's not a thing. But anyway, that shows how naive I was going into it. But I was like, oh, maybe they like people. And so we went out and visited over my spring break. And I won't lie, the first day was absolutely awful. I am not an East Coast girly. And so the first day was awful. It was raining. Nobody was friendly. We got lost, all of these things.
No.
But once I got into the classrooms and was sort of like seeing all of the stuff that they were showing us, I was like, okay, this is a really great experience. And if you get into Harvard Law School, you cannot say no. I skipped over the funniest story about this is when the guy called me, the admissions officer, to tell me I got in. What I said, which, again, now at the age of almost 42, I'm sort of thinking, maybe not the most professional. I said, you got to be shitting me. I sounded very Iwan on that phone. And then I was a little bit in shock. And then he says, it's okay. You can get off the phone. Call your mom. So
That's so fun.
Yeah, I got in. I went to Harvard. Ultimately, came back, started my career here in Des Moines at a law firm in private practice. At Bell and McCormick is where I work, and then a few years ago now, took a brief hiatus from private practice and went and was the chief diversity officer in-house. And did some in-house lawyering, which gave me a really good perspective on what actually happens inside companies.
I'm sure.
And earlier this year, I decided to transition back, and so I'm back at the law firm I started at so many years ago. That was a long introduction, but...
I know. It's so fun. I know when I first heard that you went to the to Harvard, I was like, oh my God, she's so smart. I'm like scared of her. And then, I mean, you're just like not a scary person, but it was like, I was so impressed when I heard that. I was like, Matt, you didn't even get into Harvard.
So what was that experience like, Nola?
Yeah.
Going from Iowa to Harvard, what was that experience like?
So it's very interesting, and I'm going to go a little DEI here, just because I have that background. It was not an interesting place because I was Black. Actually, Harvard is the most diverse school I've ever gone to. It was very interesting because of the geographic diversity, right? There aren't very many people from in-state schools, and so there are a lot of people there who are Ivy, either Harvard, Yale, Harvard, that type of thing. And I thought both the socioeconomic, I don't come from a lot of money, and also just being from the middle of the country that people don't know about. A lot of people were like, oh, are you from Idaho? And I'm like, no, like, I mean, we should all know our 50 states, right? You got into Harvard Law. So I'm a little bit concerned that you don't know the 50 states. Iowa is different. And so actually looking back, if I'm being honest, and I've talked about this a little bit before, like, it was 2006 to 2009. Nobody really talked about mental health back then. I was probably a little depressed, if I'm being honest. It was the first time away from my family. I'm really family oriented. And, you know, I was dealing with these new dynamics that I hadn't dealt with before. And I think I was a little depressed. With that said, really great experience, obviously, fantastic legal education. I am glad I went. I'm glad I pushed through the 3 years. I got to meet some great folks. I have some friends, at least a few that are still my friends to this day. And so it was a great experience. But looking back, I sort of wonder, and I'm not a person who regrets things, but I sort of wonder, like, how would it have been if I hadn't been suffering through untreated depression?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, and that's real.
So interesting.
Mm-hmm. That's real. But thank you for sharing. I don't know many people that went to Harvard, so I thought I'd ask.
You're among the elite, Heidi.
It's very interesting because although I would say, like, people think that there's something like uniquely special, and maybe this is coming from the person who went there, and so, but it's just a law school, if anything.
Yeah.
It's slightly less competitive, I would say, than other places, unless you want to be on like Harvard Law Review or something like that, which I sort of disavowed myself of that notion pretty quickly. But in some ways, because everyone kind of knows if you do reasonably well at Harvard, you're going to get a job. And so sometimes at other law schools, right, you have to be number one or number two. So it's a little cutthroat. Like, I've heard stories about people cutting out pages in the library so that people can't find different things. That's not, I never experienced that type of competition.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm. Is it pretty tight? I mean, so do you keep in touch with a lot of people that were in your cohort, your class, whatever they call it?
I don't. I have a couple good girlfriends that I met, and, you know, I'm friends with lots of people on social media, so we sort of follow each other and congratulate each other when we get a new job and things. But there's really only 2 people that I'm pretty tight with. But so you start out in your 1L year with 80 people in a section, and so typically you get a pretty tight-knit friendship from that group. And that's where those
that's way smaller than I would think it was.
Well, there's 560 people in the class, and so you're in sections. So it's seven sections of 80 people. And so that's where a lot of those relationships form early. And I know a lot of my classmates still get together. I am just, anyone who knows me in real life probably thinks I'm a little bit more extroverted than I am. And secret is I'm pretty introverted and not very out there, and sometimes have a hard time making new friends.
You do a good job of seeming like you're extroverted for sure. Well, fun. So what you said, and I liked how you said it, like it was good for you to go kind of in-house somewhere where, you got a totally different perspective. I guess talk about some of those things. And I know you probably can't talk about everything you experienced, but I guess what are some things that you saw or noticed or observed, or I would just love your insight.
So I think as outside counsel, which I spent 13 years doing before I went in-house, you're sort of diagnosing problems. People are coming to you. I posted on LinkedIn a few weeks ago about people treat their lawyer as the ER. And so also, as a side note, I've been watching The Pit, so like I'm really into this analogy. But they treat your lawyer as your ER. And so I'm handling problems like really when they're already far down the path of really now we have to deal with what's already occurred. And in-house, you get a different experience because you're experiencing it from start to finish. Yep. And because nobody has to pay you when they stop by your office, they start talking to you a lot sooner in an issue. And so I sort of saw some of the issues that were happening. And I don't know if you want me to get into them, but like, documentation, for example. And I think that this is And if I look back even at my private practice, right, like I can see those things. But again, when you're not in it every single day,
Right.
you're not as focused on these issues. You're focused on the issue in front of you and saying like, oh, the documentation wasn't great here. But now I see, hey, we don't actually ever train people when they become supervisors on how to properly document conversations with the people that report to them. And I'm not just talking about performance conversations. So it's not just a performance review or a performance conversation where something is going wrong, but even the things that are going right.
Right.
I think people tend to think that their memories are far greater than they are. Not me. I understand. I am Dory. You'll ask me something that happened yesterday, and I'll be like, I'll swear up and down it didn't happen. And
Let
you're
me go
like,
get my notes.
you're like, I sent you the email that happened yesterday, and this is what you said. So yes, it did happen, but most people tend to overestimate what they will remember.
Yeah,
And
I would agree
so,
with that.
for example, you get to performance review time, and people really only remember maybe what happened over the last 30 days, unless something huge happened. And that's why it's important to document throughout, because
Yeah.
there could be something great that happened 6 months ago. There could be something not great that happened 6 months ago that you want to make sure is in the performance review, because then what happens is maybe something not great happens a couple months after the performance review, but you didn't remember the not great thing that happened that's the same thing 6 months ago. And now you have someone who got an excellent performance review, and now you're like, hold on, this has become a pattern. And you're trying to have a performance conversation and exiting someone out, and they're like, hold on, wait, like I just got an excellent performance review. I thought I was getting a promotion.
Yeah.
And so we're really just not on the same page sometimes. And so I think that's one of the things that I really noticed. Another thing that I really noticed is you can give advice and tell people what to say, but you're not in the room having the conversations when you're outside counsel. And to be clear, inside I'm not having the conversations either, but I'm more real in true time having those conversations with the people that are having the conversations. And you see the emails that are sent, right? Like not just at the end of the day when someone's filed a claim, you see them like as they're happening. And one of the things that I noticed is people often think that they are very clear.
Yeah.
And they're like, I said the thing, I told them. And then you're like, hey, well, send me what you told the person, so like we can assess sort of where we are and what's our next move. And you're like, I'm reading through this, and if I were a court looking at this, you've never actually said the thing. And part of it is that people don't want to be mean, right?
Yeah.
I get it. And sometimes people think being direct is mean. And it's kind of cliche, but clear is kind, right? It is better for someone to know that they are struggling than to end up later having this issue come what seems like out of the blue to them. Even you're saying, hey, I had all these conversations, and I'm looking at the conversations and I was like, this does not mix. I'm not a big fan of the sandwich methodology of, like, I'm going to tell you something positive and then something negative. For some people it works. Like, I think this is also like the reason why you can't just have one methodology for how you work with people, because all people are different. They take things different ways. And so I'm the type of person where if you even hint at something that I did not do perfectly, right? Like I think I'm getting fired tomorrow. And so like you have people like that. And so you don't have to say the thing very direct or harshly to that type of person, right? I'm overgeneralizing here, but I think those types of people are probably your higher performers anyway. And so you're probably not needing to have as many of those conversations with those people. But there's a lot of folks who like, they need it like laid out in plain language. Like you are not meeting expectations. Like, I don't know why people feel like that is rude to say when that is accurate.
Yeah.
I would imagine being in-house too, and this is just me thinking out loud, but it's probably you feel a little bit more of the human element, because when you're private practice, you're kind of you're like you said, you're the consultant or you're the outsider. So when you're in-house, you probably see a little bit more and feel a little bit more. Would that be accurate?
That is true on both sides. So I would say I'm a pretty empathetic person, and it is different advising someone to terminate someone when you know the person being terminated, right? Like that is, it's hard, it weighs on you in a different way, but also from the supervisor standpoint, right? When you're advising someone that is sort of just a name that you don't know their dynamics, you don't know how they're going to speak to people. When you work with the person day in and day out, you sort of know like, hey, how do I need to talk to you so that like this translates even to the supervisor to then translate it to the employee? Because again, not all people are the same. And so when you're outside counsel, you're really sort of, a lot of times you're talking to the HR person, which is not the person having the conversation. And so you don't know the dynamics of the actual people in most cases. And I think being in-house gave just a whole, to your point, Heidi, just a whole human element all around, right? Like, you know, all of the things, right? Like not even the supervisor, like, right? Like what will the higher ups think about this? And like, how should we handle it from this? And like, how do we need to communicate it to this person? And all of these different things.
Yeah, that's interesting.
I love that you brought up documentation as the first point, because that is like, people just don't. I would agree with you. Like the companies that I've been working with over the last several years, like people just do not document things. And then it's like they get to the performance review or they get to that like hard conversation and it's like, what? We just like had drinks last week. And it's like, oh man, like, and just keeping that stuff documented is so much easier than trying to put it all in. But I also like how you said document the good things too, because I think that we all like go right to like, oh, I had to have this hard conversation with so-and-so, like, you know, document that. But I don't think that we probably think about documenting the good stuff too. So I like that.
And I get it. People who are leading people typically have a lot on their plate, right? Like, because typically that is not your only job. You're not just a leader. You probably also have some type of work of your own. And so it is one more thing that is being asked of leaders. At the same time, if you just get in a habit of taking some notes, and maybe this is a bit of my law background coming in. Every meeting I go into, I have like a little notebook and I jot down some notes. Now, I will admit that they're not always great. And sometimes I look at them and I was like, I don't even know what I was saying.
I don't know what that was.
But if you get into a good habit, there's lots of tools these days. And so if you just get in a good habit of jotting down just some quick notes about your conversation, then when you're later asked like, hey, have you talked to this person about this before? Even if you have a note that says, you know, March 27th, you know, spoke about errors in XYZ, right? Then you can be like, yeah, like I talked about that on March 27th. I talked about that on May 27th. I talked about that on July 27th. And, you know, now we're in September and we still keep having errors, right? But if there's no notes, right, you're just going off that memory. And again, leaders are very busy, and so your memory about the one-off conversation maybe that you had with somebody while you were trying to get something out the door is just not going to be as good as you think it is.
I always tried to make a point, you know, to prepare for one-on-ones as a leader. And so in doing so, you're already kind of jotting down the things that you intend to talk about. And I mean, that's a topic we've talked about before on our podcast, is just the importance of communication and even the importance of one-on-one meetings. But I think that's a great way to at least get some of the skeleton of the notes down, and then you can go back to it and it's a lot easier to remember what was talked about, good and bad.
Yeah, a few talking points go a long way, because that also makes sure that you don't get in the meeting and either one, just forget because you get caught up on one topic, or two, that you, let's be honest, get scared because you don't want to have a difficult conversation and don't say the thing. And a lot of times when it's just sitting in front of you, I actually, as part of some work that I did, had to have a hard conversation with someone. And so then I was put in the shoes that I'm always telling people to do this in. And I went in prepared and I had my talking points, and it was hard. There were some things that I didn't want to say that was on that sheet of paper when I was actually sitting in front of the person. But I was like, no, these are the things that I must say in this conversation. And then to sort of follow that up, Heidi, I think a follow-up email is just always great, so that everyone is on the same page, right? You heard what I heard, and you learn whether there's a disconnect a lot earlier, and it's better to learn that there's a disconnect in what I said and what you heard earlier rather than later.
Yeah, very true.
I agree with that. Huh. Interesting. One thing that you brought up when we were talking about bringing you on, and I don't even know if you'll remember this, but is like kind of the correlation between some of this and burned out leaders. And as you know, we talk about like well-being, and you were supposed to be at the Potential Within, but I think you had a sick dog or something. What do you see? I mean, I'm sure you see a ton being out and working with a lot of organizations versus when you were in-house, but I guess what are some things that you're seeing, or how like some of these issues that come up, like how do leaders handle them, and like kind of how does that impact them? I know that's kind of like a loaded question, but I would just love to know what you see or how you think people process this.
I think maybe something that people don't realize is people just think like, hey, this person, has this fancy job title and they're a leader and they're saying these things and doing these things, and they don't necessarily understand that the way those decisions weigh on people. And so, even I'm going to go on a slight tangent here, but last year I was chief diversity officer. And so last year, a lot of leaders and a lot of organizations were making decisions about what they were doing with their DEI programs. And it's easy to say, depending on, what your viewpoint is, well, they should just do this. And, this should be an easy thing for them to do. And one of the things that might be an unpopular opinion from someone, in my view, is like, these aren't easy decisions to make. I don't think people, some people, but some people cut their programs and it wasn't sort of just hey, I never liked this anyway, and so like I'm just cutting my program. And so those types of decisions weigh on leaders. When people are being terminated, I've seen leaders cry. I've been in meetings where, HR people are, really like wringing their hands. It might seem to the person who's having whatever action done that those things are just, somebody made a flippant decision. But a lot of times there's a lot of thought that goes behind it. There's a lot of emotions that go behind it. And I think to your point, in terms of burned out leaders, when you're handling sort of that emotional baggage on top of all the just like work that you need to do, not everyone is able to just let that go, right? Like some people are just
100%.
empathetic people and they have to make the decision that they have to make because either, their supervisor said so, or like it's just the right decision for the business. But that doesn't make it easy.
Right.
And people take that home at night. People don't sleep well because of it. And we know what not getting enough sleep will do to people. And, they're wringing their hands about decisions, I will say, like, in some ways because of everything that was going on and thinking about how we keep our program going and how do we support employees and protect the company and all of that. I wasn't sleeping very well in 2025, right? Like, so like I also experienced it firsthand when you're responsible for other people, sort of how that affects you and your, also some people are able to leave work at work, but like, when you care about your job, it's operating in the back of your system all the time, and it also just like raises your nervous system generally, right? Like the stress level that lies underneath a lot of people, I think we don't necessarily talk about it. People can look cool as a cucumber on the outside and completely stressed out on the inside, and that, I'm not a doctor here, but I think it has a toll on the body, right? And so, and then all of a sudden you're sick and you don't quite know why, and you don't know why you can't get better, or you don't know why you're tired and you can't get better. And some of it is that sort of burnout and stress that is operating in the background that I think in some way has become such commonplace that like we sort of glorify being busy and having a lot to do and being important and all of those things that like we don't realize that that's actually taking a toll on us.
Yeah, all too often we let our career and job, and a lot of times, at least in my career, I was looking for individuals that wanted a career, not just a job, right? And what really is the difference there is, well, maybe they're, how do you define that? It's probably relative or subjective, but they're all in, and it's hard for them to separate their identity, if you will, like you said, when they go home. I mean, what happens at work, 8, 9, 10 hours of the day, it does not leave or stay at work when you walk out that door or wherever you are that you do your work. Yeah.
And we have these little things that we're obsessed with. And so then it also follows us because if you're like me, I had no email on my account for, 8 hours. And the number of times I went to check the email that didn't even exist on my phone, and that 8 hours was a little scary.
Yeah. I know all your notifications, like, give me anxiety, Nola. God, who knows?
I typically don't have any, but obviously I'm not on my phone during our call. But I agree with you. No red dots on my phone.
I know. That's like one thing early, like when I started to identify some of like the burnout and some of like, nervous system regulation is like, I shut off all, like, I don't get any notifications except for text messages or calls on my phone. And I'm like, all of the dinging and buzzing during the day just was like frying me. So,
Oh,
how do you balance it?
My phone even made a sign, made one sound, I'd like throw it out the window. Anytime it makes a sound, I'm like, what happened here? Because I think it's funny. We used to pay for ringtones, and now literally, if it makes a sound, I'm like, what happened? What went wrong? I'm like, I don't even know how to turn it off.
So how do you balance this? Like, you're in all kinds of conversations that are hard because you're getting a lot of those calls when it, like you said, it's like so far gone, or there's a hard decision that has to be made. Like, how do you do that?
So I would love to say that I'm, somehow evolved in a way and I have all these great tips, but like actually just recently, my good friend Kelsey Knowles recommended ScreenZen, which is an app.
Ooh, I've never heard of that.
So what you can do is shut off certain apps during certain times, and it really makes you think about whether you need to open it. And so one of the things that I tried to do just mentally is be at work when I'm at work and at home when I'm at home. And particularly since I've had my daughter, I really try to be mom when I'm being mom, and stay at work when I'm at work. So to that vein, during the day at work, all my social media apps, I have on I can only view them like 9 times a day for like a certain amount of time.
That's cool.
And so I shut it off during the workday, and then they come on at 5 p.m. And I do leave my work on during the week because, I'm a lawyer, and so I can't do it. But on the weekends, I do the same thing to my email. And so I have to be very intentional about checking my email. And one of the things that Kelsey had said, which I think is very true, is if I need to check my work email more than, 5 times, maybe I just need to log in and give some dedicated time to work, as opposed to trying to do both. And I think that that's part of what causes burnout too, is like we're trying to be too many things to too many people all at one time.
Yes.
And if we focus on one thing at a time, and sort of, do something, complete the task, and like move on to like what we're doing next, I find for me at least, that helps a lot with not feeling burnt out. Also, sort of providing some dedicated time, realizing what stresses you out. You said notifications stress you out. And so one of the things that I was able to do when I went to in-house is I had a much better control of my email. I had a filing system. And so I try not to make it, my goal is always so that my email doesn't scroll. That I've either handled things or I filed them away where they need to be filed. And so actually the other night, my email was out of control. I was feeling overstimulated, right? My daughter's iPad was too loud. The dog was too needy, like everything all at once. And I was like, okay, what I need to do is log in and handle these emails, because it's not even that I have so many things to do. It's that I feel a little out of control. And so I need to control it. And then in my home life, sort of same thing, right? Sometimes it's the dishes have piled up, or my daughter's toys are all over the room, and like what I'm feeling is overstimulated, and I just need to fix the thing that I can see, and my nervous system will calm down.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, sometimes you just need to cut it off or go deal with it and then come back to whatever you're doing. I love that. Kelsey, we need to get Kelsey on here too. We should have had her this morning too.
You just got to let it go. Sometimes you learn. Especially, my children are a little bit older, and you just eventually are just like, you just gotta let it go.
Yeah.
Yeah, Kelsey
can't control everything.
She was on mine.
Yeah.
Any other? I know we're almost. I don't want to take too much. We could probably talk about a lot of these topics. We can have you back again. But any other best practices from like a HR standpoint, or kind of stuff that you see that maybe could have been resolved, or any other last thoughts? I love the documentation. I love like being more clear. Anything else that you want to share?
I think the other thing is, whether it's HR or your lawyer or whatever, just being willing to ask for help sooner.
Yes.
I think a lot of times people think that something can be handled informally, or they're just being nice, they're accommodating someone, they're doing all of these things. And I think and a lot of times people think, oh, if I report to HR, or if I bring in the lawyer, like somebody's going to get in trouble, this is going to become some formal thing. But really, you should think of your HR team or your lawyer or whoever the person is that is advising you as just a consultant, right? Like, it doesn't have to turn into anything. It doesn't always go in some file. Sometimes it's just like, hey, this is the situation I have. Like, you think we're okay? We're doing this right? I think a second opinion is never a bad idea when you're dealing with an employee situation, because a lot of times what I see if someone was trying to handle something and then they don't actually get a second opinion until they're really struggling.
Yeah.
And some of the struggle could have been helped by simply having, right? Like, I mean, just some diversity of thought in the room on how to handle a particular situation.
Yeah. That's why I appreciate you and Kelsey a lot on some of the situations that come up when I'm out and about and I'm like, I don't know if this is right or wrong and I'm too close to the weeds at this point. Like, I need to just have another thought process. So you two are always my go-to because I think Matt gets tired of talking to me about all my situations. Heidi, do you have any other questions or any other thoughts?
Oh, I was thinking, and I had one, and I was going to grab a pen, but then it would have been noticeable when Nola was talking. What would you say, Nola, as you think about the kind of your course of your career? What has been the biggest change, and you could go either good or bad on this, that just deals with the human dynamics? And that's a pretty broad, but when you're thinking about just how to, whether it be living your best life or helping a leader or helping an HR or even just an organization in general, what has changed over the course of time let's go for the better, that you feel is making organizations stronger or leaders stronger? Because it seems like we always go to the negative.
I think one of the things that is improving over time is, for a long time in work, we told people to show up, leave everything that you had going on at home, and do your job and go home. And one of the things that I see broadly across employers, which I think is a large improvement, is recognizing that people are whole human beings. Yes. And sometimes what is going on at home can't stay at home, and trying to find ways that we can still be productive and do the work of the business while supporting and caring for the people who allow you to do those things.
I love that.
Yes, I love that too.
And that is a great change, a huge change. But still, we still have work to do. Again, not to try to go negative, but I mean, we're even, one of the things that we've been talking a little bit when we do talk about just well-being is even the evolution of well-being. So many organizations, are thinking of it as a program, but really it's an operational system. Right. That organizations can be adopting leaders on down as to how they approach just the concept of wholeness. Of us as humans. They're a human, they're dealing with humans, and we all just need to keep that in mind because there's so much that's going on around us that we need to be in tune to.
So I actually saw a LinkedIn post the other day sort of along those lines of someone talking about like having a chief well-being officer, and they said even they had held that role, but they think that there's a real problem with that, because what happens when you put someone in that role, sort of like having a program, is everyone else takes a sigh of relief, right? Like, HR is like, oh, that's not on my plate anymore, that's on their plate. And some of these things, when you're talking about well-being and treating people as a whole person, it's not something that one person in one office or even, a few people that are in charge of a division or a department can handle. That's something that every single person in your organization needs to care for every single day.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And it's hard. It can be hard. Like so much of what we started this conversation with is like, the business still has to run and the things still have to happen. It's just how do you adopt that and kind of put that in your culture and just how your company operates. So
it brings an element of vulnerability. That's for sure.
But I think to that point, I think if every single person is doing it, what I have found over the course of my careers is sometimes it's not the big things. It's not the big splashy
Right.
programs. It's not the thing that gets put on LinkedIn or in the press release. The things that make a difference are how people treat each other every
Yes.
single day that cost you $0.
Yeah.
And
really
how you make them
often,
feel.
and often zero time, right?
Yeah.
Like this is just how people are interacting with each other every single day, and adding a human element to that. I'm not going to go on a tangent about humanity and where I feel like we are in a world with addressing humanity. But if we can show up as humans and recognizing that people are dealing with all types of things that we have no idea about, and interact, kindly and respectfully with other people, that goes a long way in caring for people. And I'm not saying you don't need the programs. I'm just saying that the little things matter a lot more, I think, than we give them credit for.
Yeah.
No.
I would agree with that.
So true.
I always say our symptoms and whatever's going on at home does not stop when you clock in at 8 a.m. or whatever time that is. So, especially when you're in the toddler years like Nola and I are, it's just another game. We are on day 2 in our household of wearing princess. We have Rapunzel and Snow White went to school today for the second day in a row. So I was like, I'm not fighting this. If you want to wear the same dress you wore yesterday, that's on you.
I draw the line, Nikki. I'm learning to I used to think, I was like, why do people just let their kids go to school in anything? And I actually just did a post about this last night. I now understand, because you're just trying to get out the door in the morning with like part of your sanity. And so we wore a Christmas shirt to school this week, which is like a big no-no for me because I'm all about a theme. But I was like, you know what? You picked it out, you're comfortable in it, and you're not crying, so like let's just go. But I do draw the line that you can't wear the same thing that you wore yesterday.
I know. I also 14 weeks pregnant here, and Matt's been MIA, so doing his job. I'm like, I'm surviving.
But I am no longer judging other people. That's just the line I draw in my household. I was like, I now get it. I now get why people like show up in like, cowboy boots and like a sweatsuit. Like, I get it. I get it now.
I did.
And it might be acceptable if you see me in the same outfit tomorrow because, sometimes that's just what we need to.
I do draw the line. Olivia wants to always wear the little like princess shoes, and she like sticks her toes in there, and it looks so uncomfortable, those like plastic shoes, and I'm like, no, those are a no. Like we've all gotten in a drop down fight with her on no princess shoes go out the door. So, whatever. So, well, good. This has been great. We should have you back on to talk more about some of this, because I feel like you have a lot of topics, because I feel like you go into the well-being side of the world a lot more than you probably admit with all of the stuff that you do as well. So